fellow vegan anti-natalist YouTuber recently made a video about her salpingectomy, which is more permanent than tubal ligation, in that the fallopian tubes are removed rather than clamped or cauterized. Tubal ligation is only 99% effective, so since she did that, I thought that I could at least share my vasectomy story, although other vegans like Durin Ryder, Vegan Gains, and Luca from That Vegan Couple have already done so on YouTube. In fact, it was Luca's and Vegan Gains videos that gave me the nudge I needed to get it done. And since Durin Ryder inspired him too. Interesting fact, Vegan Gains filming his Canadian courthouse wedding actually led to me and my wife getting married. It's just funny how much influence YouTubers can have on us. My wife said, "So if Vegan Gains is getting married and he's only 25, I'm 35 and you still haven't married me, so are we ever going to do this or what?" And so we did. I did want to get sterilized before getting married though, and I wanted to make sure she was 100% on board. I honestly withheld how I felt about having children to some of the women I've dated because I knew it would be a turnoff, and I shied away from permanent sterilization for that reason as well, but I really wish I hadn't. I should have done it in my 20s. But it's never too late, as men are fertile for their entire lives. I also felt horrible anxiety every single time I had sex with someone, even if we used protection or sometimes double protection. The idea of being a father was so repugnant to me, I can't believe I waited so long. I ended up doing it 3 years ago when I was 39 years old. I looked up a site called No Scalpel Vasectomy that YouTubers told me about and found a local urologist. Sorry I wasn't on YouTube back then, so I don't have any footage of it. So I'll just show some clips of me driving around the medical complex where the urology office is located. I made an appointment and saw the doctor. Believe it or not, he actually tried to talk me out of it. After glancing at my chart, he thought I was 29. He said, "Well, at your age, I always recommend taking some time to think about this because it's permanent, you know." I realized that he must have made an error, and I said, "Doc, I'm 39, not 29. To which he said, "Oh, so you are. Never mind." So then he had to inspect my stuff, and of course, and then we scheduled the surgery. Ethiological lives in Canada, so her procedure was paid for in full by the Canadian taxpayers. In the US, our medical expenses are paid by ourselves and our employers, but we also have a welfare program here called Medicaid that indigent people can use. I looked it up, and apparently because of the Medicaid extension called the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, tubal ligation is now covered by Medicaid. It seems strange that it wasn't covered before, as it saves taxpayers untold amounts of money in the long run. Strangely, vasectomy and salpingectomy are apparently not covered, at least in my state of Michigan. Apparently other states do cover vasectomy. I mean, that and abortion are the most cost-effective medical procedures there are. It's a weird system to have our employers be involved in our medical care. It's something you have to consider when changing jobs. People who are permanent contractors or freelancers have to pay out of pocket for their own health insurance. I put in a certain amount every month, and I pay extra so I can go directly to specialists and not fuck around with what you'd call a primary care physician and their referrals. Then my employer matches what I put in times 2, so he covers most of it. We also have what's called a copay. It's a small amount you pay during office visits, like $30 or so. I also had to pay for my sperm count tests, of which I did too. I was a little misinformed by Luca's video into thinking that the procedure and the recovery would be easy breezy with only a day of discomfort, but I was mistaken. And I even worried about talking about this because I don't want to dissuade anyone from doing it, but I do want to be completely honest about my experience and the pain that I had. So first thing, I showed up and the guy in front of me is there with his newborn baby and his wife. I drove myself, so I don't know why this guy had to bring the whole family. The majority of people getting sterilized are already parents, of course. When it was my turn, I went into a small suite, like at the dentist, and had to embarrassingly take my pants and underwear off in front of the doctor. He then put a rubber band around my penis and used a clip to attach it to my shirt so that it's out of the way. He then injected an anesthetic into the left and right side of my scrotum. At first I thought this would be the most painful part, as it's supposed to be. No scalpel vasectomy means that the doctor just tears a really small hole in the scrotum, obviously without cutting it, and then uses an instrument to find the vas deferens, the tubes that connect the testicles to the prostate and the urethra, and that's how sperm ends up in seminal fluid. Cut those tubes and the sperm stay in the testes and don't leave. Eventually they're reabsorbed by your body. He was talking to me during the procedure, and I didn't feel anything until he went for the left side. Apparently the anesthesia on the right side worked for some reason, but on the left side it either didn't work or hadn't started working yet. The pain was almost hard to describe, but if you males have ever been kicked in the testicles, that is what it felt like. I had to yell out in pain, probably freaking out the next guy who was in the waiting room. But after that I didn't experience much discomfort. I think what I felt was him actually cutting the left vas deferens. He showed me what he used next, a really small cauterizer, like a razor-thin hot iron. A bandage and a jockstrap later, and I was out of there. Because the anesthesia had finally kicked in, I literally felt no pain. I walked to my car no problem and drove home. I felt an overwhelming sense of relief and accomplishment. I was only going to take half a day off work, but that would have been really stupid because hours later I was in a lot of pain. The scrotum swells up to about twice its regular size and you have to put ice on it. Honestly, I was uncomfortable for about a week. When I was at work, I had to sit back or sort of on the side, leaning on one of my legs. But the swelling did go down and the pain eventually went away. So after that, it was time to get concerned about whether it worked or not. We continued to use other forms of birth control for 3 months. Then I did what was definitely the most embarrassing part of the whole thing, masturbating into a plastic jar and then taking that to the lab. I put a big sticker on the side of the jar and then put it in a small paper bag with all of my info on the outside of the bag. But that was a complete waste of time because the woman at the lab just took it out and inspected it right in front of a room full of people anyways. But you gotta do what you gotta do. I mean, I'm not going to let embarrassment stop me. So it came back negative. That means 0 sperms were detected and I was quite overjoyed. However, it wasn't celebration time just yet. A friend of mine got a vasectomy and impregnated his wife 3 months later, so that's why I decided to wait for 3 months. There's still sperm living inside the reproductive system, and you have to flush them out with either sex or masturbation for a few months. But even though my test was negative, I was still freaked out, so I waited for another 6 months. I did the extraction process and sample delivery again, and again it was negative, so I was finally satisfied that I was sterile. And let me tell you, having sex without a condom after 10 years of using them straight was the bomb. I was about to say the motherfucking bomb, but I've never had sex with a mom, yuck, and I never will. So even though my experience was more painful than most, I would do it again in a heartbeat, even if the pain was much worse. It's just too important to be worried about a week of discomfort and swelling, and now that it's been a few years, I barely even remember it. The birth control pill, condoms, withdrawal, and other methods of birth control are not permanent and not as safe as sterilization. I have a high regard for anyone willing to get permanently sterilized without ever having children. Of course, people who have chosen celibacy or women who are postmenopausal don't have to worry about it. But even if I didn't have a partner, I'd still feel slightly uneasy knowing that I could physically produce children. Being sterile creates peace of mind, knowing that I cannot contribute to the disaster of life on Earth.